Alright, so today we're going to look at cell energy, how the cell makes energy and what it's used for and what organelles are involved. Alright. So the first thing we're going to look at is photosynthesis. You've heard this, you've seen this, know what this is. And this is what plants do to make energy. It's one part of the process. We associate it as the only thing they do, but it's not. They do another part too as well. But this is only specific to plants. So if you see here in the middle, we have this green little thing right here, this little structure. That's our organelle. Talked about that in the last unit. This organelle is the chloroplast. Okay, chloroplast in the plant is like the little solar panel. Right? It absorbs light, takes that light energy, mixes it with the carbon dioxide that it receives from us and other animals, and the water it gets, and turns all of that, mixes it all in there, and makes energy. Right? For the plant, that sugar is its food source. It's what it's going to use to convert that into energy. Okay? And then it gives off oxygen, which we need, all animals need. Okay? Alright, so where does this happen? Right, this happens in the chloroplast. We said that. That's that green guy. Alright. What makes it happen is the pigment that's inside there, chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a green coloring that absorbs light. Plants actually absorb every color of light except for green. It absorbs all the rest of the colors except green. And so all that light coming in from the sun is used to produce that energy that the plant needs. Okay. Why do plants have to have this? Well, because they can't get up and walk around and go eat and get the energy they need. We can, so we don't have to do this. Now, it would be sweet if we could. It'd be nice if we had chloroplasts and we could walk outside in the sun, get re-energized, feel great. We don't have that luxury, all right? But at the same time, we get to get up and move around. Plants can't. Right? The day plants get up and start walking, yeah, I'm leaving. I'm going to find somewhere else to go. Okay? Organisms that do photosynthesis, such as plants, are also called producers. Okay? Producers means they produce, they make their own food. Another name for them, autotrophs. Okay? Autotrophs means they automatically have their own food. They don't need anything else for food. Got a little off there. There we go. They produce their own energy. So if we look at this chloroplast here, we have these little stacks of discs in here, little solar panels that absorb the light, take in the water. Okay, they change that into energy, which is ATP. That's something important. You got to remember that ATP. That is our energy source. They release oxygen. That's the first step. All right, this is called the light-dependent reaction. It means it depends on whether the plant has light or not. Then it enters what we call the light-independent reaction, which means this doesn't have to have sunlight. All it has to have is that carbon dioxide that we're breathing back out, and it changes that, uses that energy to do that to make its food, which is sugar. Okay, that food source for the plant, sugar. Who would have thought you have sugar in plants? You know, we eat vegetables because they're healthy. We don't eat them because they have sugar. Well, they do have sugar in them. You know, it's not much because that's what the plant uses for its energy, so it uses it up as it makes it. So here are pigments that are inside the plant. Okay, we notice we have our chlorophylls over here. Those chlorophylls are what do photosynthesis, chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B. Notice they're the green pigments. We have carotenoids. They also do a little bit of photosynthesis, but not much. If we didn't have the green chlorophyll, the carotenoids can't produce enough food source for that plant. And here's our equation. This is a big thing we need to know. There's two equations you got to know. This is one of them. So the equation for photosynthesis, we have carbon dioxide, CO2. So we have our carbon dioxide right here. We mix that, we add that with water, H2O. And then we add our light to it. We have our light source here, all right, which is from the sun. And all of that stuff put together goes through that light-independent, light-dependent reaction to produce sugar, glucose. Remember, anything ending in OSE is a sugar, okay? So it produces that sugar and produces those oxygen put back into the atmosphere so we and other animals can breathe. All right? Okay, so the second part of cell energy formation is cellular respiration. This is an aerobic process. All right, this word aerobic, you do aerobics to produce, you use oxygen. That's why we call it aerobics when you do those exercises, because it makes you breathe. It makes you take in a lot more oxygen. Well, that's what we have here. This little guy, we know him from the last unit. He is the mitochondria. He produces the energy, the power inside of our cells. All right? Plants have these as well. Okay, that's what they use to transfer their sugars into usable energy. But this is all we have. We don't have the photosynthesis happening in the chloroplast like plants do. But you notice we have similar compounds here that we're using. So we have that sugar, the sugars we eat, mixed with the oxygen we breathe in, and it's going to make us water. We produce water. We breathe out carbon dioxide, and then we produce this lovely molecule called ATP. That is our energy. We need that. We need all of our mitochondria doing this all the time to produce that energy for us to do our functions inside our bodies. Okay. All right, so looking a little bit further into that mitochondria. Here's our mitochondria. It's in the mitochondria, both plants and animals. All right, so we both have this. And that chemical produced, that's the main thing. You'll see it on diagrams as a yellow star most of the time, or it'll be, if it's on the test, it'll be a black and white star with ATP written in there. ATP equals energy. Always. Remember that. Okay? So we got our animal cell over here. We can tell that because it's a little bit more rounded. There's no large vacuole. There's no chloroplast. Here's our plant cell, thick cell wall, large vacuole, chloroplast. So we can tell the difference between plant and animal there. Both of which have that mitochondria. That mitochondria is where this cellular respiration happens. All right. Here is our second equation. All right. We have glucose or sugar mixed with oxygen that we breathe in, and that in turn gives us three things. It gives us carbon dioxide, which we breathe out. We produce water. All right, we always produce water. And then 36 molecules of energy. One time, 36 molecules. That's one molecule of sugar makes 36 molecules of energy. So, how you can relate this and how you can think about it is, if you eat a bunch of candy, all right, you get that sugar high, that sugar rush. That's because your body is breaking that down. It is full of this glucose. It's breaking it down and producing massive amounts of energy all at one time. You get that high. You get that energy rush, that sugar high. And your body uses it up. And then you crash, all right, because it's just a quick energy. Remember back to carbohydrates, sugars, quick energy. You eat a bunch of candy, boom, a lot of energy real fast, going crazy, and then you crash. Okay. So we have our sugar plus oxygen gives us our products. So here's both equations. And what we need to look at with both of these equations are what they have in common. Okay. So we have sugar. We have oxygen, carbon dioxide, water, water, energy, energy. These two equations are exact same except they're reversed. Okay? So photosynthesis, the reactants of photosynthesis, are the products of cellular respiration. Okay? So if photosynthesis is what plants do, and it gives us these things that we need for cellular respiration, this is what we do. Do we need plants? Yes, we need the plants to make the things that we need. We make, on the other hand, we make the things that the plant needs. All right? Do plants and animals need each other? Yes. If you don't have plants, animals don't survive. If you don't have animals, plants don't survive. This is a symbiotic relationship, and we'll talk about that when we, next semester when we look at different relationships among organisms. But we have to have each other. We rely on each other. Okay. All right. So that molecule ATP. We're going to take a look at that real quick. Down here. ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So we have ATP. Adenosine molecule, that's right here. This is the adenosine molecule. Tri means 3. Phosphates. There's our phosphates. Okay? So we get this from our foods that we eat. If we're looking at just us, not plants, but looking at animal cells, we get this from the food we eat. Food gets broken down, and that energy is released out of that food because it's released out of that sugar that's in the food. Okay? Now, how we get the energy. So this is a little bit of a process here. So we start with that ATP molecule. All right? In this molecule, we have these 3 phosphate groups. Inside of each of these bonds in between is your energy. And so as that energy is needed, one of these phosphates is broken off and opened up, and that energy is released. Okay? The ATP molecule isn't the energy, it's the carrier of the energy. And so now once that energy is released and used up, we have ADP, adenosine diphosphate. That bond has been broken, that energy is released out into the cell, and so now we have this carrier molecule waiting to be recharged, basically. And so when we eat again, we get more food, we recharge it, we fill it back up, add that phosphate back on there to cap it off, and now we have a fully charged ATP molecule. All right. The way I can relate this for you is, think about if you ever had a pixie stick. It's a little straw full of sugar. It's closed up. That sugar is energy. We've talked about that already. That sugar is energy. If you break that thing open, break it in half, like you break one of these bonds and break a phosphate off, what happens? That sugar goes everywhere. It just pours out. That would be the same thing as like it's happening here. We break that bond between those phosphates and open it up, and that energy, that sugar, for instance, pours out into the cell. The cell grabs it all up, uses it, does for its reactions, its functions inside there to make everything work. Right? So that's a good analogy for ATP and how we get the energy out of it. A normal little pixie stick. Okay. All right. Another way we can get energy is through a process called fermentation. This is a very, it's not an ideal way to do it because you don't get as much energy. This is an anaerobic process, means it doesn't have oxygen. No oxygen needed for this to happen. So we have our sugar. That's where we start every time. We make, we take that, break it down, make carbon dioxide, water, but we only get 2 molecules of ATP. That's a long way from the 36 we would get through cellular respiration when we have oxygen, right? Because that oxygen helps energize, helps make more ATP. Okay, very small amount of production here. Could we survive on this? Possibly. You do enough of it, it would keep you going, but would you be active? No, you'd be very sluggish, not have a lot of energy, but it'd be like the bare minimum to keep everything running so that your body wouldn't shut down. Okay. Remember, this is an anaerobic process. An means not aerobic, not oxygen. Okay. So different types of fermentation. We have lactic acid. Those of you that are in sports, you've probably experienced this before. Okay. Your muscle, after you lift weights, you lift a lot of weights, you exert a lot of energy there, your muscles get real hard, real firm. That's lactic acid buildup in your muscles. Okay. When you exercise a lot, you need a lot of energy, so all that energy is going away. You can't get enough oxygen into your cells fast enough to keep the process of cellular respiration going, so you start doing fermentation. Well, fermentation creates lactic acid, and that lactic acid builds up, makes that muscle real hard, real firm. You notice that right after you lift weights, lift weights, you run, your leg muscles get real tight, real hard. That's what happens. It's built up with lactic acid. Okay, causes cramps, soreness, burning. To the touch. If you try to touch them, they hurt when you touch your muscles. So that's part of the process of not having enough oxygen. Your body has to produce some other type of way to get energy. Goes into that fermentation process, and one of the byproducts of that is it makes lactic acid, and that lactic acid builds up inside your muscles. Alcoholic fermentation is another process we use. This one's a little different. We use this to make a lot of the things we eat. All right, we make breads using this, cakes, because we take that sugar and we put this little guy in here called yeast. Yeast is a living thing. It breaks down this sugar and it produces acid, produces alcohol as its byproduct from breaking down that sugar. All right, so bread, cakes, beers and wines, all are produced by this. We also have some bacteria that do this, alcoholic fermentation. It's a very slow process. All right. If you've ever made homemade bread, you get all the ingredients, you mix them all up, you got that dough, you put the yeast in there, and instead of that ball of dough being this big, you let it sit for a little while, and it gets bigger. That's because that yeast is using up that sugar, it's reacting, doing all its stuff, and it's producing all this byproduct. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Carbon dioxide buildup. All these different things are being built up inside there. That bread gets bigger. That's how bread, you make bread rise. Okay. The last one is chemosynthesis. All right. So we break this word down. We have synthesis, which means to make. We have chemo, which means chemical. All right. To make using chemicals. All right? It's the process where some organisms use chemicals from the environment to make energy. Okay, so we have our photosynthesis example here with the sun, the plant using photosynthesis to make energy. But then we have other things. We have plants at the bottom of the ocean. Well, do they get sunlight? No, they're so deep they don't get sunlight. So they have to find a different way. So they use chemicals around them to turn those chemicals into energy, similar to how photosynthesis would work. They take that in instead and turn it into a usable energy because they don't have the available light energy to do photosynthesis. All right, so the last thing we have here for the notes today, we got a series of words and explanations here. You have a Venn diagram in your notes. You are comparing photosynthesis versus cellular respiration. So at the top of one circle, write photosynthesis. At the top of the other circle, write cellular respiration. And you're going to put these items in where they fit. All right. For instance, I'm going to go do the first one here. Chloroplast. Chloroplast equals plant cell. Plant cell does photosynthesis. All right. Using that chloroplast. Okay. It doesn't use the chloroplast for cellular respiration, even though plants do that as well. It would use another thing that's listed on here for cellular respiration. All right. And that's all your notes for today. If you have any questions, email me. Join up on the Canvas conference on Tuesday mornings if you want to. If not, we will see you next time.